Hi everyone. Today we are going to be covering the first part of the UI UX design process, and I'm going to be walking through this with my own example of an app idea design and how I would approach this first part. And so the first part would be to understand, plan, and sketch, and then to be developing a first round of prototypes. And this is all occurring in Figma. And so I'm just going to be showing this in Figma and walking through a little bit of the process. So understand this first step is to sort of begin researching and planning your product idea, potential users, audience, and just begin doing a little bit of market analysis. Here I have sort of an example of some early stage research and ideation. Um, when creating a final project portfolio, you might take a bit more time to do the research and build this out more, but I'm just sort of giving a brief overview and getting this started. So for my example, the app and idea service is an app for building and discovering communities. So this would be a platform for users to join or create communities, and to also be able to discover events and people and connect with everyone. So who are my users? So my users are probably anyone who's looking to create, discover, or join a community. But I think more specifically, when I thought about target audience, I'm thinking more of like an anti-capitalist, socialist, non-corporate space for community. So people who are looking for this in society, because that's kind of where I'm seeing the opportunity gap. And then for, and then I'm also kind of identifying like Gen Z and millennial in specific. Some market analysis of some existing platforms. And there's a lot of different platforms that exist out there, but I'm looking at something more mainstream and free. So we have Partiful, which is an app for hosting and RSVPing to events. There's Discord, Slack, and Teams, which I feel like are apps that create community channels to interact and mostly for messaging and calling. Facebook groups is another platform I think that is widely used for communities and groups. And then finally, there's Reddit, where people can interact on a lot of different conversation streams and threads, etc. So what is my differentiation for my idea? I'm thinking about this being more focused on like community building as well as like discovery. And I think for the look and feel, I want it to be modern, but yet a little bit nostalgic. And then I also want this to be a values-led space. And yeah, so that's sort of like my preliminary research for my app design. And then planning and sketching, um, I broke it out into so the first part is just listing out potential features and pages. So I have create community, where people can like begin creating their community page. I want them to be able to create and add events and also be able to message within the community and also within individuals. Sharing community, being able to invite people to join and also to post about your community or events you're hosting to more of a public stream. And this public stream would sort of be the delivery page not delivery, discovery page, where people can discover communities, discover events, and also people. And then on an individual level, I want the user to be able to join a community, create a profile, add their interests, and also post to the communities or to the public, and to be able to make connections. And finally, some other things I'm thinking about is like I want there to be a shared community values page and also thinking about moderating for these different posts and communities to make sure they're adhering to the community guidelines. So this is part of this first planning phase where you're just kind of listing out the different pages or features that you might want to include in your app. And I just did mine in Figma. sort of listing what everything is. But you can do this on a sheet of paper, in a Word document, or in Figma if you like. And then the next part would be to do some sketches in low fidelity wireframes. And for this, you can sketch, but you could also do this digitally, which is what I did. So I'm just going to walk you through what my low fidelity prototype looks like, and then give a little demo of how I built this. So I started by just creating these rounded rectangles to serve as my screens, and then I began populating it with sort of what my app would look like, I think. So I've got create your profile, I have community values, create a community, and discover communities, events, and people. And I think for my idea is like to get started on this app, you would go through each one. And so this is sort of the flow for create your profile page. And after you create your profile, um, you'll enter this community values section where you kind of agree to these different community values, and then you agree and continue. And then you can either create a community, or if you're not trying to create a community and just discover, you can press this one. But I think I have also included this bottom navigation bar. I think that will become available to the user once they complete the first two steps. So these are just things I've started thinking about that I'm able to sort of begin planning out through this low fidelity wireframing process. And as you can see, like I've just picked a font that feels like a sketch so that I'm not thinking about like what it looks like, but more of like what the final design of the fonts and everything looks like, but more of what the layout is and what the different features are on the screen. And so this would be the create a community page where you could add a photo, a description of your community, what it is, be able to add people, make it closed or open, create the community. And this is an example of what a community page would look like. So this would be the title, so the images, the description, and then there would be two tabs for posts and one for discussion. And then this would be the discovery page, where it's broken up into communities, events, and people. So for communities, it would show the different communities that exist. Maybe it's by location. I haven't really thought about that yet. And I probably need to add a search bar now that I'm thinking of it. So to just kind of get started on this tutorial, how I would add a search bar is take a rectangle. And then I don't want it to be filled in, so I'm going to add a stroke. And then I want it to be rounded, and so I'm just going to increase this corner radius by dragging it. But I could also just enter something like 100, and then that'll round the corners for me. And then um, I might want to have like a search icon. And so what I can do is use my plugins. There's two ways you could find assets and bring in some existing like icon assets. But what I like to use is a plugin called Iconify. And this just gives me access to so many icons. I'm just going to do a search. Um, and let's just do this little guy. So I'm just going to import as a component. Here it goes. And right there. And so now I have a search bar, which is nice. And then I might make this border a little thicker so that it matches my other parts of my design, where I also used like a thickness of 2. So now I have this search bar. And then I'm actually going to select both by holding Shift, press Command G to group or Control G. And then I'm just going to bring it here. And because this is a low fidelity wireframe, um, you don't have to make sure that like all of this is in one frame currently, like one board. But when I actually prototype, all of these screens would be individual frames. But because this is just more of a plan, so that when I do get to prototyping, um, it doesn't, this, how I create this can be a little bit more rough and fast. And I'm just trying to envision what it would look like. So yeah, here I have the events tab, and then here I have the people's tab. And so what I'm missing would be the messages tab. So let's just quickly do that together. Um, so for this frame, if I want to create a frame, so a frame is essentially where you are designing into, and then it's basically like a canvas for everything that's on that frame. So I'm going to go to this frame tool. I'm just going to make one the same size. So I'm just going to drag it like this. Actually, no. I'm just going to make it roughly the same size. And then if I want to make sure it's the same size, I'll probably just do this. And then when you're moving frames, you always want to drag them by their title. Okay. Um, so if I was making this from scratch, what I would do is take the rectangle tool. And because this is just a sketch, essentially, I don't have to make this rectangle like the perfect size. Once again, I don't want the fill, so I'm going to add a stroke. I'm going to make this stroke a little thicker by doing 3. And then if I want to round the corners, there's 2 ways. I can either go here in appearance and begin adding a corner radius, but another way you can do it is once you click on this rectangle, these circles will pop up, and then I can just do that. And then I have this. But if I, okay, so it seems like what I was using was a thickness of 5 actually. So I'm going to do that. And then there I go. There I have a screen. But because I want my sketches to feel a little bit more consistent in sizing, what I can do is also just copy this over. And because I already have this built out, this layout, what I'm actually going to do is copy this entire screen as well as this one. And then, so I'm just going to add the star to show that this user has gone through all of these pages. And then if I want to be creating this messaging app, I'm just going to take this square here and move it under messages. And then we'll go messages. And I think it would still be good to have a search bar actually. So I'm going to leave the search bar there. But when I think about what I want the user to see in messages, I think I would want to have 2 tabs, which would be communities, events, and people. Actually, I think it makes sense to keep these three tabs because maybe someone would want to have a messaging thread for each event. So what would my messages look like? I'm thinking it would be, I don't need any of this. It would be these longer rectangles. That's how I want these messages to show up. And then, okay, so maybe a community, I need these assets again. No, what happened? Okay, so I had accidentally deleted that outline. So yeah, make sure you don't, I'm holding shift and then I need to unclick this one because I don't want that to delete. So what I could actually also do is lock this. So I just selected the rectangle, and then if I go to this layer side, I can press the lock button, and now it won't select. Okay, so messages, and yeah, I'm gonna move this guy down, and then I'm gonna extend this rectangle. So maybe feel like East New York soccer. It would look something like this. And then maybe I would have a circle with just a stroke. Just gonna do 2 again to indicate notifications. So I'm just gonna take like 2 messages, 2 unread messages. Bring that guy inside. And then if you want to duplicate, you would just hold the Option key and then drag. And then I'm just going to have this guy. I'll make the radius a little smaller, maybe like 15. And then I want it to look like there's more. And so if I want it to look like there's more within this little box, then these bottom corners wouldn't be rounded because you wouldn't see them. So the way I would edit that is I would have to double click into this rectangle and then select these bottom corners specifically so that the top corners stay rounded. And I'm just going to change that to 0. And then now, as you can see, it looks a little bit better. But I think because it's a bit wide, I'm just going to shorten this a little bit and then re-center. No, trying to find the center. There we go. And then now it looks like it's going off. So yeah, I like that a lot. And so I'm just going to make a copy of this. So I'm selecting everything, holding Option and dragging it down, holding Shift. If you hold Shift to duplicate, it'll keep things in line. So I'm just going to replace this one here. And once again, when you get to the prototyping stage, you have to be a little more clean about how you're doing all of this. But because this is just, I'm just going to change this to 1 and then get rid of this guy. No, get rid of this guy. So that's communities. And then I think events would look something similar. So I'm just going to take all of this, but this rectangle is locked, so I need to find it here. So just look for the locked one. And this, and I'm holding Shift and Alt to copy. And then now I'm going to take this, I'm going to remove the fill here and then add the fill for events. Oops, sorry. So add the fill. And then because it's in front of the text, I want to move it to the back. So you can either right click and do send to back. But as you can see, there's these little shortcuts. So if I just press that key, it'll move it to the back. So maybe for events, it's like 11:21 soccer game. And then this one, it's like improv class, 12:1 improv class. So something like that. Maybe I would change these up so that it looks a little different. But because this is just like a sketch, like a low fidelity prototype, the content doesn't really matter. Like I wouldn't spend too much time unless it really looks different. So for people, I think it's going to be a little different. I think it would just show up like a circle. This would be the profile pic of the person that they're messaging. Like, oh, this person messaged you. I'll just do, let me get rid of that. Just do like, mm, hi. That will be name. And then I'm just gonna grab some text holder. Make sure I'm in frame 4. So I would click the frame and then paste it in here. And this would be Kai's message. I'm gonna delete this. Oh, I have to unselect the outside frame. And oh, then I'm just going to start duplicating these. Maybe Kai, Sarah. And so yeah, this is kind of just showing what my different screens would look like. But ideally, as you're making this, you want to also think about what are all of the screens you want to show. Because if I was fully developing this app, I would probably also make a screen that looks like, okay, if I click into this, what does that look like? What does the actual chat feature look like? Which I can build, but I won't be showing that for today. I just wanted to show you how you would create this low fidelity wireframe. And then when we're thinking about first round of prototypes, it would be you would take these sketches. So you could have done this by hand as well, but I think um, you can also do it digitally as long as you're keeping it very bare bones. That's what we think of when we think of a low fidelity wireframe. Um, and then the next step would be to make this a medium fidelity wireframe, which has a little bit, which is a bit more built out. But I'm going to pause this really quick.